Hey there YouTube, welcome back for another painting video. So today I am painting Kiyozumi haiboku from the Bushido two-player starter set that was kindly sent to me by GCT Studios. You can see an unboxing video of that up in the corner here, um, where I do a sort of a quick review on it. So you can see here that I've gone and primed the miniature in white, and I'm just giving the whole thing a coat of non-oil to basically add some shading and shadow in those recesses. I want to let it pool in the recesses and a little bit on some of those surfaces where the dips aren't quite as prominent. What I do is I'm using I think this is the wash brush or the shade brush from Games Workshop, but anything from sort of a size 4 to a size 6 is good for doing this. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Part of the reason I do this on models primed with white is so that I can see the detail. White obviously sort of makes everything look very flat and can sometimes hide the detail, make it a little bit harder to see where you're supposed to be applying certain colours. So that's sort of the second reason that I apply it, and the other one being the getting that nice undertone or shadowed areas, just so I can see where highlights and lowlights should be, depending on where the non-oil has dried up basically. Okay, so once that's dry, I'm now taking some white scar. It's two blobs there. One is just a bit too much medium there, and the other one was a bit too thick, so I just mixed it in with the medium to get it a little bit thinner. But it is just white scar. So all I'm doing now is just very carefully picking out the white areas on the body. I am using some reference from I think they're official photos of like the official painted models. I really like this colour scheme, sort of that green, black and gold sort of effect on this particular army or faction. So whilst I'm applying this white, I'll sort of go over the video or over the game a little bit for my understanding of it. So the two-player starter set comes with, I believe it's 10 Ronin, and Ronin can go in most factions, and I think the reason you get 10 is they actually split them into two families, the kiyozumi family, and I believe the other one is the hozumi family. And so what they've done is you have all these different Ronin, but they're all able to go into this family, or at least the kiyozumi are, and then you have the hozumi, which can go in the other family, and that's what creates the two-player factions. So to keep them in theme with each other, obviously because they are those factions, I am painting them similar to the other models within that faction. So the other four models for this family are going to be painted using the same kind of colours, just obviously slightly varying. So yeah, so applying white to all of the areas that are going to be white here, leaving some of that shading, but also because I primed in white, where that non-oil has stained it grey, I can use that as a shadow for the white. You can see on certain areas I'm not going all the way to the edges, or I'm leaving a little bit of that grey showing as it comes out from sort of that under overlapping cloth kind of areas. And this just basically has done half the job for me. I just need to build up that white on those layers. So once the white's done, I'm now taking some Corvus Black, which is a little bit more of a cooler black. It's not a solid black like Abaddon. It's a little bit lighter and has a little bit of a bluish tint to it. And I'm using this to do all of the black areas. So that's the the sort of over wrap that he has here. In the reference image, it's like like a wrap with gold detailing on it. So obviously I'm going to go in and paint all of this black. The recesses, obviously I'm leaving with that shading in there, as that's actually a little bit darker than the Corvus black, but everything else will be done with the black. His main robe that he's wearing, the overrobe, has a black, it's green, but it has a black stripe down it. It goes sort of down the edge of it, as well as on his sleeves, which I also paint in black. So what I'll do, I'll speed the video up here, but I'll leave that whole process in, like I have been doing for my videos. They seem to be quite popular for you guys, and then we'll come back when I move on to the next part. Okay, moving on to the main robe and this sort of under one here, basically the green areas. I'm now taking some warpstone glow. Again, this is neat from the pot, slightly thinned down in the pot. I thin my paints as I transfer them into the dropper bottles, so I don't thin them too much on the wet palette. But you can see here, I'm just getting all of the green, sort of the main green areas basically. So again, rather than me rattle on, I'll speed this part up and let you have a watch. Okay, so next I'm taking some moot green, and I'm going to use this for my sort of the brightest highlights. Again, this is quite thin, and I'm using this to edge highlight the upper part of the cloak, as you can see here, where the light is going to catch the strongest, but I also use it on the sort of the large flat areas that are a little bit more parallel with the ground, so sort of similar to how the shoulders are. There are a few areas like that, and then I'll also run this down a little bit, um, down the folds and creases of the robe, along the back. I do actually miss some footage, so the sped up part of this is going to be a little bit shorter. The camera froze, and unfortunately I didn't notice it whilst I was painting this brighter green in, but hopefully you guys will be able to sort of see the gist of what I was trying to achieve with this. Okay, so I've mixed here a roughly 50-50 mix of the moot green and the warpstone glow, and I'm using this in the lower folds, so they're in sunlight, so they're going to be a little bit lit up, but not as bright or vibrant as I wanted it with the upper areas. So yeah, you can see here the difference, and also what I meant with that parallel with the ground sort of folds. What I then do next is mix up a sort of a shadow tone using some of that Corvus black and the warpstone glow. So you can see here I've left it running so you can see roughly what I mix in, but it's probably around about 2 parts warpstone glow to 1 part of the Corvus black, and then I've simply added a little bit of water on the brush here to thin that down, and then I'm going to use this as a shadow area in the deepest recesses, and obviously, like you can see here, areas where that light from the right hand side just won't get to. And then finally for the greens, I take a little bit of that white scar and mix in some of the moot green just to get a really vibrant, bright green. And this is going to be a highlight for the uppermost area on his right hand sleeve. So just this sleeve here, just to give this area just a little bit more vibrancy, um, with that green at the top. I wanted a kind of nice sort of bright contrast between the colours, as it seemed to have on the reference that I was looking at. Okay, once that's done, I'm now moving on to the gold um, sort of patterning that he has on the black areas. For this, I'm using some Avalon Sunset and a size 1 brush. This is one of my Artist Opus brushes, and I'm very carefully lining the outside edges of the black border that I hand painted earlier. Um, at a few points I do make the line a little bit too wide, but that's not a problem when going over black, because all I had to do is go back into the Corvus black and paint a dark line down the middle again, just to neaten those gold lines up. After that, I then add in some of the pattern. I tried to sort of get a similar pattern um, as what the original painter had done on his models that I'm using for reference, and I'm just sort of like trying to do sort of a 3-leaf pattern, um, alternating sides along that robe. And obviously he has this on the sleeves as well, which is why you can see me obviously painting them in. The wrap that he has around his waist has a different pattern on it, so there's no need for the gold trim here. I could have done this with gold paint and save some hassle, but I wanted to give a go with the non-metallic metal. I like miniatures like this, and if you notice, I do it with my with anything from Corvus Belli, the Infinity miniatures. If you've watched those videos, I prefer to do non-metallic metals on these kind of detailed miniatures than I do on Games Workshop stuff. For some reason, Games Workshop I feel look better with metallic paints, and then things like this, I think it's because they're a lot more finely detailed, or they feel more finely detailed, and so I feel like the metallic needs to be more finely detailed as well, and so it just feels better that it's non-metallic. Now, I'm by no means even close to being good at non-metallic. I do the best that I can. Hopefully you guys like the look of it. If you do like the look of this and you do enjoy the videos and you want to see more content for me, then if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button down below. And obviously if you're enjoying the video, hit that like button and leave some feedback in the comments, guys. Let me know what you're enjoying, if you're enjoying these longer videos with the sped up portions, or if you prefer the shorter ones where I cut scenes similar to what Games Workshop do their quick tutorials, where I say here apply this color to these areas, and then I cut and say okay, this is done, apply this color to these areas, and so on. But it feels like you guys prefer the longer ones where I go into a bit more depth and sort of really show you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly of my work. So still working with the non-metallic metal here. You can see that I've obviously got all that design on there. I'm now making up a lighter yellow, and this is going to be for my highlight colour. I have in the past, and I do still use, a non-metallic gold triad set from Reaper Miniatures, which is nice, but I find it's a little bit more towards the brown or sort of mute side. Um, I wanted a much more yellow golden vibe for this one, and so I'm using the Avalon Sunset and mixing in the highlights from that. So I'm just keeping this simple, this one, running this lighter sort of tone down on the areas where the light would catch the most, and obviously trying to sort of highlight those raised areas of the design that I'd freehanded in there. Okay, so with that finishing off, I now make up a small amount of the what will be the brightest highlight, which again is basically that mid highlight that I'm now using, mixed up with a little bit more white, and that just gives me a really sort of pale yellow for a highlight. It is almost white with a sort of yellow tint, and this is just going to be sort of an edge highlight for the most brightest areas, just to give that bit more of a gold look to it. And then finally, I'm just mixing up a very small amount um, with the Corvus Black, just to get a darker shadow area, and I'm applying this just in well, basically anywhere that I want from shadow for that gold. So just in the deep recesses on the front here, and on sort of the right hand side of the folds, and just anywhere that will be sort of under shadow. And that is basically it for the gold. Next, I take some Zandri dust and use this for the bow as a sort of a very light wood colour. And I also use it on parts of the robe, just for some of the detailing, to have it stand out a little bit from the white. And I think in the reference it was a different colour, but I just wanted to, you know, have a little bit of a difference. Okay, next I take some Ashapti bone and just use this as a nice simple quick highlight for the wood. So just on the edges, and then I just sort of feather it off of the upper area slightly where the light would catch a bit more, just to add a little bit of detailing and texture to that wood. So for the red details, I'm just using some Mephiston red here, and I'm applying this to the sort of the rope cord that he has across his chest. These little I'm not sure what they are, but these little wraps or whatever they are around the bow. I also go in and do the handles for, or the hilts for his two swords that are just on his hip. And you can see there I'm just adding some highlight to the areas that I forgot to prior. I'm now mixing up a lighter red rather than grab one from the pot, just to add a little bit of an edge highlight to all of these red areas. And then here you can see I decided that the handles I'll do red as well. Okay, so moving on to the skin tone, or at least I will be in a bit. Okay, so that is the model, the majority of the model finished now. What I'm going to do with this part of the video is leave it slowed down for the majority of it so that I can explain the process that I go through for the skin tone on this model. So you can see here I'm using some of that Xandri dust, and this is to get that sort of yellow or yellowish undertone um, to the skin, rather than a sort of a reddish or purpley undertone. The way that I do my skin tone sometimes is not to use any kind of recipe, because I feel that that gives too much uniformity to skin tone, and obviously everybody's skin varies slightly. So by having a sort of a base idea of the colours that I mix to get a skin tone, I don't have the exact quantities of each colour that I mix, if that makes sense. So if I'm mixing, say, red and white to get a pink, I won't necessarily say, oh well, it's going to be 2 parts red, 1 part white. It will be 5 parts red, 1 part white one time, it will be 4 parts red and 3 parts white another time, and I do just vary it. So I'm leaving it here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Right now I'm just trying to dot in the eyes. You can see that I've got a little bit of shadow on there from where the non-oil was there, and obviously it's made that area darker, but now I know where I'm going to be adding the sort of the darker side of my skin tones. So I'm now taking some Corvus Black and just dotting in the pupil. I hate doing this on miniatures. I'm sure most of you feel the same. Eyes are horrible to do. Most of the time I'll leave them. The miniature's so small, you're using it on a tabletop, it doesn't matter too much anyway. And then here I'm just going back in and touching up anywhere where the paint may have gone that I didn't want it to be. So for the skin tone, a little bit of Corvus Black, a little bit of red. This is going to be a sort of a burgundy brown colour, some of that Xandri dust, and I now have a bit more of a reddish brown tone that I can use for shading. So this is a little bit stronger than what I want. I will lighten it down a little bit later, but at the minute I'm just sort of sketching in my shadows on top of the mid-tone. So sort of under the brow, side of the nose, left side of the face, and a little bit under the cheek. Now I'm mixing in a little bit of the Ashapti bone, so I'm using that bone colour as to lighten things as sort of the main skin tone. And then you can see here I'm just applying it over the top, and this is thinned a little bit, so it's not going to fully brighten it, but it gives it a nice little bit of highlight. This is more the highlight area, so I'm applying it sort of the cheekbone, and you can see I'm just building up that highlight by mixing more of that Ashapti bone into the shadow mix each time and using that for a further layer of highlight basically. So this is almost pure as Shapti bone here, but it does have a little bit of that shadow in there, and you can see that I'm just using that for the upper areas, sort of that strong cheekbone bit and sort of down the nose. Also, I do have a little bit of, obviously that's a wet palette, so there's a bit of moisture there. I'm using that to thin down the Shapti bone, which is why I sort of spread it about a little bit, and that's picking up some of that moisture and making it a little bit more damp. So again, going back into that mid-tone and working on the hands. Now that I've got sort of those tones mixed on the palette, I can sort of go back in. If I need to mix up a little bit more, I just pull some of the previous colour into it and that will mix up a little bit more for me. And here I'm just playing about and adding in, you know, making a few adjustments throughout the model if I need to. And finally, I'm just applying some highlights to the hair there with some of the white, and I'm now mixing up a grey to highlight the black parts of the body. This model I didn't have any kind of idea on. Well, I had an idea because obviously I was going with a reference model, but in the order that I was going to be painting things, I didn't have a full idea, like I'm going to do this part first, this part next. I had a kind of idea, but obviously I'm sort of going back and forth between a few pieces. So now I'm taking that grey mix and just reinforcing that white a little bit. This is a little bit thinned down, and I'm just getting it into those recesses and on some of the shadows just to make it stand out a little bit more. You know, I'm just mixing up some more grey here for highlighting the dark areas of the robe and that. Okay, so the footage did get a little bit corrupted there. I've had to cut that out, but it was just a little bit of grey highlight. All I'm doing now is just darkening up the inside green robe here with some Drakenhof Nightshade. Just using this as a glaze to not just darken it up, but tint it a little bit more towards blue and just make it more of a dark blue-green, just so that it stands out a little bit and is separate from that outer green robe. I felt that it's a little bit too much green going on in the model, or too much bright green, so yeah, I've just added the shadow there. Okay, and here is the finished model. So I haven't put any basing on him yet. I'm waiting until I finish all of the models so that I can get their basing the same. I'm still sort of deciding on an idea. I'm thinking possibly something with pink flowers or something like that, sort of a little bit more sort of Japanese themed. But yeah, that's the finished model, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button. A huge thank you and a warm welcome to all of you who have recently subscribed. It means a lot to me. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my model. and the paint scheme. Let me know if you collect or paint Bushido yourself and what family you collect. Like I say, I am new to the game. Thank you to GCT Studios for sending me the starter set so I could make these videos for you guys. But yeah, that is it all. That is all for today. So thank you very much for joining me, and as always, take it easy and keep painting those minis.